The doctors, they're the real heroes, man.
Nah, bro, it's the nurses.
Yeah! And the first responders.
Yeah!
Yeah!
Especially the cops.
Is that the troops?
Even the troops love doctors and nurses. The Sky Troops.
Do you think if all the troops got together and formed their own hospital, we could beat this virus?
Something just came out of the plane.
What's that dangling from the parachute?
It's probably masks and ventilators.
Nah, brah, it's our Trump bucks.
Actually, judging by the height, width, and depth of the container and its rate of fall with that size parachute, it's probably a Gates Foundation 3112 toilet to the future. Maybe it's love.
I want to get under it and let it crush me in its embrace. Everyone run toward it!
I can feel it. I can feel the heat of their love and passion.
My flesh! My flesh! I give my flesh to the troops!
Is this because I fucked a troop's wife?
Sucks podcast about a city we hate to love, and we're back in quarantine. Colin is still in the worst quarantine of all, fatherhood. How you doing over there, Greg?
Hey man, boat pilled and loving it.
Hell yeah. Dude, the people that were renting the house next to me just moved out, and we were talking to their landlord who was over there cleaning some stuff up, and they told us that they had moved out to go move on to a boat. So people are joining you in droves, Greg. It's the world of the future,
cool.
A water world.
So they're gone now, and you can't tell them about the fuel leak I've been cleaning up for the last 26 hours or so?
Oh, why would I try and discourage them?
Yeah, okay. Anyway.
Well, Greg, we had an imagined salute to the troops at the beginning here, but on Friday, right outside our street. Yeah, right. We had a dream. No, Friday, right outside our street, we had a real salute to the medical troops as a fire truck went by blaring its fucking siren and alarm and shit, followed immediately by another fire truck blasting inspirational hip hop.
Oh my God, is that what the fuck that was last night? Dude, there were for like a half hour, there were fire trucks streaming down Nickerson blaring, and I was like, a huge building must be on fire. It never occurred to me that maybe they were just celebrating the caregiving troops. Is that possible?
If it happened around 7 p.m., Greg, that is in fact what it was.
That very much could have. Wow, it didn't even occur to me.
We were ordered to go out onto our, patios and whatnot and cheer the brave firefighters on. Instead, Bren ran out because I think I was pooping, as we had discussed earlier. This has been a problem for me this week. Bren ran out and just yelled at them to shut the fuck up.
Well, this is the first I've ever personally heard one of these nightly celebrations of any kind, because I've not, I live basically in an industrial area, except like there's like 100 people living in this marina. No, not a single person's ever like gone out in their cockpit of their boat and like clapped or anything, as far as I can tell. But
yeah, because why would they? And as far as I can tell, nobody did it here either, because I think most people just got immediately panicked that there was some huge fire somewhere.
Right, seriously, that's what I thought. I was like, holy shit. I mean, I've seen like multiple like hook and ladders like go down the road. There must be like some conflagration on Westlake or something. It's probably happening like nowhere. It's just like there's a few like urban lib twits, who they have footage of doing it. And that's gonna, be just one piece of the propaganda that convinces the country like we're all doing fine. We're all hanging in there together when we're doing nothing of the sort, when this is just an absolute travesty that is, forget that it reveals the utter incompetence of this administration or of our political system in general, or the fragility of the late imperial state. It's just actually really practically just going to be a holocaust of the most marginalized people in America. But hey, everybody clap,
Yeah, cool. I mean, I guess in the spirit of the fire truck drive-bys, when the Seattle Indian Health Board did ask for supplies, they did send them body bags. So that's the other message, right, that we're getting.
Yeah, that's some fucked up shit. I mean, that's so on the nose that, like, you want to believe that it's like that is the result of like just a very on the nose reveal of structural racism. But I'm suspicious that wasn't actually just somebody very racist idea of a joke, like, because that's just so like that's so dead on. I mean, I guess more likely it is the first thing, that it's structural, right? A request comes in, and just as stuff gets distributed, there's essentially a metaphorical bin of stuff going to this. Who was it? What Native American organization was it?
Well, it's called the Seattle Indian Health Board, and it's one of these groups that I believe works with the BIA to distribute supplies at a local level to tribes. Yeah.
So, right. And so, like, there's this metaphorical basket of resources going to there, and just the only thing that shows up in it, is that as it gets passed over many times by people trying to allocate the resources that we don't have enough of. And that's where that stuff isn't going to. And the fact that it just happens to be the body bags is just the one thing that make it in is like this perfect sort of illustration of, the state of America. But honestly, it could have been someone's really sick joke.
Yeah, and I mean, it is the Seattle Times review of the Washington response to this did highlight that in the 2009 sort of SARS concern and swine flu concern, that this kind of thing happened a lot, right? Which is because nobody thought about distributing health supplies or anything until like it was actually required, and because they had let all the apparatuses that would handle that completely rot and deteriorate, that supplies all went to the wrong places, or more often just never got there at all. So I mean, it could be incompetence. It's just one of those things that like really puts a point on a thing that's actually happening.
Well, I think the one thing it's not is incompetence, right? I mean, it's again, it's anything from a sick joke to by some like functionary, which I guess is unlikely, but it just seems so on the nose. But not incompetence. It's it is our white supremacist sort of structure, which in a time when there genuinely are not enough needed resources to go around for reasons of austerity, when they do go around, what little there is, they're going because of the white supremacist structure of our country. The marginalized, not white communities are going to be passed over, and they're going to die. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's not incompetence. That's it goes beyond that,
Yeah, well, it's also the functioning of a system that you have allowed to deteriorate, but allowed to deteriorate in very specific ways, right? So they didn't have to like blow the dam to sink the Ninth Ward in Katrina, right? Because they had just allowed certain things to deteriorate and kept other things up, right?
Yeah.
So it did the work for them in a way. But it's especially bleak. But luckily, I thought a friend of the show, Rich Smith, had a very, we'll say, enlightening article in The Stranger, uplifting, that we'll definitely link to in the show notes, and you should absolutely go read. But yeah, I felt like it really, it uplifted us out of this. I mean, we were feeling like, this is neoliberalism run amok. 80,000 dead already. We're going to shoot past 200. 3 times as many as like the next country of COVID deaths. We just need something to let us know that some government still works, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, some government works. This is such. I mean, are you going to read some of it?
Yeah, fuck it. Let's read it. Whatever. This thing is so fucking good.
Thing, but let's I mean, you got to get some of the context here because this is kind of important.
Yeah. Let's go through. So. On Thursday, Council President Lorena Gonzalez and Council Member Teresa Mosquedo pulled the tax Amazon legislation sponsored by Council Members Shama Sawant and Tammy Morales, which would tax the payrolls of big business to pay for pandemic relief checks this year, and then later on housing and Green New Deal infrastructure. The council's budget committee planned to vote on the tax next week after 2 long meetings last month on the 3-bill package. Now, this is so Lorena Gonzalez and Teresa Mosquedo basically pulled the tax Amazon legislation, so it couldn't be voted on, right? So we're not even going to fucking discuss it. So this is the reason why, though, which is fucking amazing. According to the Seattle Times, Councilmember Lisa Herbold waved around a legal analysis from the city attorney, one the council has yet to release to the public, and convinced Gonzalez and Mosqueda that, quote, many components of the legislation were neither routine nor necessary to address the pandemic. Therefore, continuing to hold meetings on the package risked running afoul of the governor's emergency proclamation, barring agencies from, quote, receipt of public testimony, deliberations, discussions, considerations, reviews, evaluations, and final actions that aren't necessary and routine matters or matters necessary to respond to the COVID-19 outbreak and the current public health emergency.
Absolutely fucking bullshit.
Well, Greg, maybe break down what that actually means, because, I think a normal person reading that just goes, what the fuck?
So basically, like, the text of the bill is essentially the tax Amazon proposal, with the addition of saying that at least for the first year, the funding should go to relief efforts related to COVID-19, because that's the emergency we are in now, with the future receipts of the tax going to combat our housing crisis and a Seattle Green New Deal program. And Herbold's point is that those future parts of the bill, earmarking these funds for our housing crisis and, Green New Deal stuff, do not, she believes, and I guess the city attorney's office doesn't believe that debating or doing business on those issues complies with that item from Inslee's proclamation. And so that's a reason not to, just procedurally, like doing the procedure of government to vote on this stuff doesn't comply with that, because it's not immediately related to COVID-19. So what they're saying is, what Herbold are saying, and what Gonzalez and Mosqueda were, I guess, convinced of, is that the city council cannot do any business at all, cannot, again, take testimony, do hearings, hold meetings on any business at all that isn't related directly to COVID-19 relief or response or whatever, or routine and necessary business, which I guess means all the laws that have already been passed, and so any new ones would be. Just where do you stop? It's like, so the city, that just basically means they can't do anything, because routine and necessary is obviously very subjective there. I think a city taxing to provide services that are needed would be routine and necessary, but even arguing that point is idiotic, because unless that is either way outside of this interpretation is either way outside, at least as it pertains to local government way outside of the scope, the intended like spirit of the missives from the state, or the direction from the state is absolutely insane. They're meeting on this stuff virtually, aren't they? This is all virtual, right? They're not actually meeting in chambers, right?
Yeah.
I've seen like footage of them on Zoom, right? They're not meeting in person. That has to be what the governor's shit refers to, right? Am I crazy? Like, I haven't looked into this or to understand it because it just sounds insane. Either way, one of them is fucking crazy. Either Inslee's saying no government agencies can do any business that's new. No one can do any new anything unless it's related to that's a bizarrely blanket statement that is totally subjective and doesn't make any sense if you're actually unless it's referring to meeting in person, which is what I would presume it's talking about, or their interpretation is that's obviously not correct. It's referring to like meeting in person, and they're just fucking full of shit and just. So it's absurd to be talking about this because obviously this is just the most fucking naked, like procedural ploy, bizarre procedural ploy. Well, I mean, Rich gets it right with the headline, which is fears over disrupting Seattle process disrupts Seattle process on big business tax. But I mean, that's a funny way to put it. But really, I mean, it's just craven. And the funny thing is, for Lisa Herbold to think to herself, to have the instinct, this is going to play. This I'm going to get to. I need to stop this tax from happening. I need to, this is our progressive slate, Lisa Herbold. I need to do the bidding of business. I need to stop this tax from happening. And the way I need to do it is exploiting this language in the coronavirus, stuff out of the state and thinking, yeah, this is a good plan. Or she's just so far up her own ass, like her own Seattle progressive ass, that she actually is genuinely like worried. Like how crazy would you have to be to like not stand on that and not have the backbone to go like, oh, well, if that's the interpretation the state takes, that's insane and we'll fight it. And it's fucking stupid because we're meeting on Zoom.
Yeah. So,
just any way you look at it, it's horseshit.
Well, and Rich actually points out, I think, to answer your question about what's going on here, that SDOT actually just announced that, they're going to open 20 miles of streets, close them off to traffic, and open them up to pedestrians. And that's going to become permanent. Interestingly, able to do that during the pandemic, even though it extends past the pandemic and really has nothing to do with the pandemic. So it appears that this rule applies to some things and not to others. And wouldn't you know it, when it comes to taxing business, you can't do it.
I mean, it's funny to point that out, that the city doesn't even have its own shit together on this, but it can't because it's insane. It's embarrassing to even be talking about this seriously, like to be debating the points of this because it's obviously just so fucking craven and cowardly and stupid. Well,
and again,
the necessary and routine business of government is to govern, which includes doing. If you're saying to take this stance is to say that the necessary and routine business of government is to ruthlessly maintain the status quo without any innovation, like a salafist level distrust of innovation. And like, in favor of the status quo forever. Like that's the routine and necessary business of government, which checkmate. That is actually true. So fuck me.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting because even in their own sort of argument over this bill, right, they take a hyper literalist, interpretation of the, governor's order, right? While at the same time taking an extremely casual interpretation of the bill itself, right? To be like, hey, look, I know it says that it has COVID-19 relief in it and emergency relief and stuff like that in it, but I mean, why read all that, buddy?
No,
like you're looking at the wrong thing.
It's so almost like
to get to literalist in one sense. A lot of work to get to
the point of the rest of this bill doesn't help. Isn't related to COVID-19, which you could easily make an argument that it is necessary. Like this is something, our society is unprepared for a disaster like this because we don't have like housing protections, for example. That's a very easy case to make, one you could make while legislating, which is the business of government. But you actually have to sort of use the fact that there's a specific COVID-19. It's almost like the presence of the specific COVID provision in the bill, in contrast, makes the rest of it not COVID related, which again is like a logical somersault. Only someone incredibly craven and stupid could even think to make.
Yeah, and so again, we begin with our predetermined conclusion that we're not allowing this bill through in any, circumstance, and then they worked backwards, right, to get there. And so Rich Smith goes on, right, he says, Herbold now suggests narrowing, quote, the scope of the Swamp-Morales proposal to address only the current public health crisis, which is a nice way of preventing the tax from addressing the actual needs of the city. Or, they suggest, postponing until the governor allows in-person meetings again, which will give big business more time and more leverage. The tax is emergency legislation, so that's if they tried to pass it now. The tax would be emergency legislation and therefore immune from referendums, so Mayor Jenny Durkin and 7 city council members would have to sign off on it. Durkin hates the tax. Councilmember Alex Peterson hates the tax, and probably 1 or 2 or half of the others don't like it either. So again, we get to the actual meat of what's happening here, which is we have a right-wing city council and mayor who don't want to do this, and are going to find any reason not to.
But let's keep in mind for the rest of our discussion tonight, a right-wing Democratic council and mayor.
Yeah, exactly.
Progressive. These are people who call themselves progressives.
And I will point out, so he says Alex Peterson hates the tax. Well, a couple of weeks ago, we read a wonderful written by Alex Peterson, and definitely not a flack for Windermere real estate. That's for sure. But yeah, written by Alex Peterson editorial, where he suggests in that very editorial this strategy for defeating this tax. Yeah. Interesting.
Yep, making
just
it
extremely interesting.
Doing emergency provisions.
Yeah, he willed it into the world, I guess. So, business once again basically stomps on this shit, and I love he gives this just at the end of his article. And people should go read this article; it's very good. But towards the end, second to last paragraph, he gives this just fucking amazing quote from Lorena Gonzalez. He says, though Gonzalez said in a statement that she continues, quote, to believe that the city council should, at an appropriate time, deliberate on potential mechanisms to raise progressive revenue. So, because you throw any more fucking qualifiers into that.
It's fucking gobbledygook. Well, listen.
Yeah, we should maybe in the future, if we get to it, potentially.
Hey, man, this is progressive Seattle. This is it, dude. This is what we have, and this is what this is the city council in one of the supposedly most progressive, bluest, most enlightened fucking cities in the country, and that should tell you a lot about what we can expect from our national government, which is in the hands of actual conservatives, and the only countervailing force is more people like these fucking people.
Well, Greg, the thing is you look, you show your ignorance again. All right. Because I believe it was the Washington Post just leaked a plan from the Trump administration to not only provide aid, but cut deficits as well.
Oh, so, wow. Deficits.
Yeah. Yeah. That thing we're all worried about.
Yeah. Right now. Ever at any time worried about, definitely right now when people are dying and the entire global economy is going to implode, largely because of America, because a lot of the rest of the world is actually trying to prevent that from happening. Let's keep in mind that, again, Tory Britain is covering the salaries, 80% of the salaries of everyone who doesn't get laid off, even when they're working from home, just so they don't have unemployment skyrocket. They don't have everybody lose their job and the economy just unravel, because they understand that it's not that they'd be paying unemployment claims out on those people anyway. So they're doing the proact. Someone got that small point through to the conservative government. They're like, listen, unemployment insurance. These people have unemployment insurance. They're going to get 80% of their wages anyway, or something like that. If they're getting laid off because they're not working. So if we just pay this through the employer so that they don't get laid off and everything keeps going, and so theoretically maybe something can bounce back a lot faster and a lot less people just die of starvation in like a barren wasteland, like this might be better for us in the long run. No one in America has gotten that fucking message. Like that's so far off the table. I mean, Bernie has said, like, he's tried to point out that other countries are doing this too. But he's like, I mean, that also the ship has sailed. You know, we already have skyrocketing unemployment, and you know they're not even fucking back in session. But you know, Bernie his proposal is, you know, $2,000 a month, back through March and till we're out of this by 3 months. You know, and that's the proposal. That's just like, and yeah, I mean, you know what? It's not as good as I mean, you should be doing that and keeping everybody on payroll. But like, this is the basic, like the logic of that kind of a plan, and the $1,200 that did get put out, that at least some people have started getting. The logic of this is that you just need to get money out there because the economy is going to fucking collapse. People, it's not just right now, people are getting hit hard because they cannot pay their rent. The more you let that go on, the more individual people are going to just go through utter deprivation and starvation. But the more and more of the economy just unravels. The more, you know, the more and more of our housing stock is empty while people are on the streets. That's not good for landlords either. Okay, like to just take this is about helping individual people survive this, but it's about preventing an economic cataclysm. And that's the proposal from Bernie. So that's like that is like the Hail Mary right now that I don't think we'll get through, at least in that form, without a lot of other caveats, this possibly being one of them. So anyway, go on. What is this proposal?
All right. So this is from the Washington Post now. The proposal calls for giving, this is they call an unorthodox and unique plan. The proposal calls for giving Americans $10,000 up front.
Woohoo!
I'm listening.
Go on.
In exchange, for curbing their federal retirement benefits, such as Social Security, the report says. So for 10 grand now, you'll just lose 10 grand in Social Security down the road.
Now, like, you know, when I first read this, I just wasn't thinking about it that closely, and I was thinking like, this is what it was for, like cutting. They meant in exchange for cutting Social Security broadly, like as a compromise, right? As a cost offset. If they're actually talking about like that's different from giving like people an individual choice to like cash in or not. Are you clear on which it is?
You're not. I don't know that you're given a choice. I think you just get the money and lose it.
Okay, maybe Security. If that's it, honestly, let's hope it's that, because here's the thing. Look, this is terrible. I mean, obviously, the right wing has wanted to gut Social Security since it was invented. We are now back to a state where both parties are ideologically aligned and are just different networks of careerists who in alliance. So they both want to do this. Joe Biden's wanted to do this forever. Nancy Pelosi wants to do this. If this is a tactic that gets them this, it gets it gives the Republicans a big bargaining chip of getting money out to people. One that will be very popular short term, probably, you know, in that people would love a $10,000 check. I mean, holy shit.
Oh yeah.
Then the Democrats, because they want to do this and they're incredibly stupid, will think, this gives us a bargaining chip they'll think it's a bargaining chip in the opposite way. They'll be like, we can throw a bone to the people and we can cover our vulnerable right flank with our very concerned suburban voters who are very concerned about deficits. We can cover ourselves by saying, look, we did this in a deficit responsible way by finally making a grand bargain on cutting Social Security, and they'll run on that. They'll be like, look what we did. Like, we managed to get the impossible to happen. We not only took care of the people in this crisis, but we actually fixed Social Security by the long term by gutting it. And that is funny in that they are that stupid. I mean, it comes from their actually wanting to do that. The thing they'll have trouble, the harder part being convinced of, is the giving people $10,000. But they might be convinced because obviously they'll see like that'll be popular. There'll be arguments for doing that, because people need it. And then when you put it together with the other thing, who knows? It could happen. There's certainly not going to be the people who stand. They're not going to. I mean, we'll be lucky to get anything for anything at this point. But here's the other point. I made this point on Twitter. I sort of cribbed a little from Mao. Keep people alive now, lose retirement money. Money can be taken again. Let people die now, keep retirement money. People and money both lost. The point being, like, this would be stupid for the Democrats to do. It would be bad. It would set this, and the reason it's bad, right, is like it's this incredible American political precedent of touching Social Security, like putting your hand on the third rail and tearing it up out of the ground. As you're like, electrified and become all powerful. But you could gain like a democratic superpower. But the thing is, like, people need that money. People need money now. The economy is going to collapse. $10,000, if it really came to that and that got out to like every American, of course, I'm sure there'd be all kinds of they'd end up being caveats, and they'd end up like not giving it to something bad, or it wouldn't be. It'll end up being $1,000. It'll end up being like $500, and you lose Social Security. But as stated in this proposal, honestly, that would be hugely important now. And you know what? Money now is better than money later. That's true. I'm sorry. Like, that's real. Now, the political precedent would be bad, right? Actually ripping up this third rail. But here's the thing. Like, we're at this point where this country's falling apart. We have, like, right-wing proto-fascists in government. The world's going to end because of global warming. Like, we actually kind of have to think, like, if we don't take massive action, if there isn't some level of actual revolution, like, none of this shit matters anyway. So I say, if this happens, again, I'm not arguing for this. I think this would be really stupid because the Democrats should be putting together a solid front and demanding every day on every fucking TV screen that we all get huge assistance from the feds because we need it. So they should, in a world where they weren't craven austerians in the service of Wall Street, they would be demanding this, and it would be so obvious and so popular and such an easy fucking thing that they would be able to get us all $10,000 or at least $2,000 a month for the foreseeable future, which will probably come to the 10,000 easily. They would be doing that. So I'm not actually advocating this, but I'm saying if they're stupid enough to get through this, all is not lost, because actually getting that money right now would be huge. And in the end, we need a revolution anyway. And we can, if it means you have to get Social Security back later, that's actually not a bad position to be in. Because we're going to need to do bigger things than get Social Security back. And if we can't do that, it means we can't do anything, really. So it's like, it means the right is in power forever when we all just die. So if you can get that money out of the government now, and for this, promise that over the next several years, like, Social Security will be gutted to the bone, like, you know what? There's reason to hope. is all I'm saying. On the other hand, if it's actually like that you get a choice to like cash out 10,000 of your Social Security and don't get it later, then it becomes this moral thing. That's like, so when you're an old person eating dog food to survive, they'll be like, well, you made the market choice to cash in for that 10 grand. And then that,
I'll tell you,
that's not good.
I think that's exactly what the plan is, right? And I'll tell you what will end up happening is if they propose this, the Democrats will immediately say, but what if like a rich person gets it? Let's means test it and we'll make it optional for poor people, which of course all poor people take it because they need the money. And then they'll come back later. So what they need for Social Security is they need a beachhead, right? So they need a beachhead to start from. So they'll do the 10,000, they'll take the 10,000 away from poor people. Then in a year or two, they'll go to those same poor people and be like, dude, man, you got like 10 grand taken out of your Social Security. I mean, for a crisis even, you should take 10 grand out of everybody's Social Security. Like, this is the like whittling point, right? Where they get in and start fucking, destroying this. And the reason I know that that's the way it's going to go is because the next line of the Washington Post report says, Arthur Laffer, a conservative economist who is advising the White House on its economic response, said in an interview that he reviewed the presentation and supports it. And so for fans out there,
still alive?
He is 100 years old. I have no idea. I'm sure it is at least 80s.
Jesus Christ.
So Art Laffer's like whole fucking life is based on what's called the Laffer curve, which is one of these bullshit economics things where you just draw a picture on the wall and you go, see, that's how it works. But his whole thing has been like, hey guys, there's a relationship between tax rates and tax revenue accrued. So there's a golden number, right, for your tax rate. And wouldn't you believe it?
It's really
that
low.
Golden number is always really low, especially for rich people. And what happens is, which happened in Kansas, where he instituted this in every other state and now at the federal level. But what happens is when you lower the tax rates, you actually don't accrue any revenue, obviously. Yeah, weird how that happens.
Well, look, it's based on the basic trickle-down logic that says if you give money to rich people, they'll invest it, you'll have economic growth, and blah, 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 blah. And just as they claim that will trickle down to the poorest people, they also claim that, because of that brings in more revenue in taxes, even if tax rates are low. Hence this curve.
Yeah. And Laffer and his people are all very well aware because, of course, they have been trying this for decades. It's never worked once. So they're very well aware of what's actually happening, which is, you collapse the revenue base for the state or the, whatever government, level you're doing this at. You collapse the revenue base. Then you come back in. The same economists will come back in and say, oh, shit, dude, you don't got any revenue anymore. You better cut social programs. Right. Yeah, so it's literally just a austerity Trojan horse. Basically.
Yeah, Laffer makes just a very clear, one of the most sort of clear and concise ways of thinking about like the like multiple levels, the strata of this conservative movement, like con, where like, yes, there are people who really believe it somewhere, and then there are billionaires who just will do anything to preserve their own and grow their own money and power. And then in between, there are think tank types and intellectuals who will be paid to come up with whole like intellectual fucking traditions, for decades, like whole like schools of thought that some of them probably do believe, like, right, at some points, and others know they're making up a grift, they're making up a long con. Like it's so multi-layered, and Laffer is just a perfect example of that because it's so specific and so accountable. It's obvious. It's obviously bullshit.
Yeah, when he's been at it long enough and was in the game early enough that he is a absolute like cynical villain. Like Arthur Laffer is one of the worst humans that humanity's ever created.
Again, I mean, as evidenced by the fact that he is still alive. Like,
exactly.
I'm shocked. I would have never guessed that he was still alive. He's got to be like 100 years old.
He apparently, is like a fucking a million years old, and apparently was an advisor to Trump in the election in 2016 as well. So, I mean, just a whole. I
don't remember ever catching that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Trump gave him the Medal of Freedom after the election, but
I missed that.
Yeah, he was brought to prominence by the Reagan administration, but again, just a wholly.
A lot of those guys are back. It's wild, man.
Yeah, fucking rules.
From all, yeah.
So yes, that's the beautiful Trump plan to gain that beachhead on that Social Security, so that the Democrats can sign it away. But the Democrats have a plan of their own. It's reported by Axios.
Okay, so if you're thinking to yourself, but wait, the Democrats won't let this happen because they're the party that's for things like Social Security and human beings being alive, etc., or whatever. Just listen to this shit.
So this is from Axios, and they're talking about the proposed plan that now Nancy Pelosi and House Democrats are coming up with for a new sort of relief funding package. The package in total totaling to $4.5 trillion, I think. But House leadership is also working on narrowing down the guidelines for how these funds are allocated to ensure that people aren't, quote, double dipping into the different pots of money, a senior Democratic aide told Axios.
What?
For example, they do not want someone who is receiving more unemployment money to also receive another stimulus check and other benefits.
Excuse me?
Quote, we're trying to limit the amount of overlap so people aren't abusing the system.
Abusing the system? First of all, you can't abuse the system if that's the system. I mean, people are just getting the money, but fuck you. You didn't have a check to I didn't have to check a box that says I deserve this money legally to get my Trump check or my Bernie bucks and my unemployment. So first of all, fuck you. So, I mean, obviously, we're talking about this is gobsmacking. Obviously, we're talking about, means testing, which is, forget the reason behind it. What we understand about means testing is the point is to exclude people. It's to keep people out of it. And the reality is it's more complicated, messier, and just lets people fall through the cracks, even who maybe could get it. And what they're saying is, pick about what the fuck they're saying. So people who are employed, we understand that stuff like the $1,200 and any further money, like maybe $2,000 a month that they're considering, it does need to go out to people, but I guess just people with jobs. Those are the people who need to stimulate the economy. So the people who haven't lost their jobs, those people need stimulus money, quote, which I mean isn't really what it. I mean, it is partially what it is. It's like relief money for people, but broadly, what makes it applicable as a stimulus is that it is going to everyone, because in the end, the effect is you're giving all this money to everybody, even people who may not need it, because who gives a fuck? But that's going to maybe have some level of stimulus on a dying economy in that it's getting in the hands of everybody. But so people who are on unemployment, don't need this money, this stuff, because
knowing how these,
so
what they're saying is, so knowing how these people think too, this is literally their point here, is that on unemployment you're gonna get the $600 bump, right? It's either per week or per check, right? And then if it's COVID-19 related, of course, your unemployment, but you'll get the $600 bump. Now, the problem is that if you are employed at this point, right, I think they're proposing $2,000. So if you're employed at this point, you'll get a $2,000 check every month. But if you're on unemployment, you'll get the $600 bump, but they don't want you to get the $2,000 check as well, because then that gap between you and an employed person would shrink, right? And there needs to be that division there, because you need to know that you hate those people and you don't like them, right? So the idea is, if you're employed, you get to have your regular paycheck plus the $2,000. If you're unemployed, you'll have your, extremely reduced paycheck, in most states 40% of your regular income, plus, $600 a week, right? And that way you don't reach the level of the employed people, right? The gap is maintained.
Yeah, the point of the $600 extra a week is a way for the federal government to simply, without a lot of bullshit, just dramatically raise the unemployment compensation, because it's way too low for most people. I mean, the thing is, it does sort of fly in the face of the way all these people think. This is something that Bernie had to fight for. He sort of implicitly threatened to filibuster that the awful bailout bill if it didn't include this $600 a week extra in unemployment. And you know what, this logic flies against everything, because it is a lot of money for low wage workers making unemployment who are going to get nothing in shitty paltry unemployment that doesn't come close to even their shitty paltry wage they were making. And so, yes, this improves that in a blanket way that's big, that, yeah, goes against everything Nancy Pelosi fucking believes. And this, we understand, this is stuff coming out of Nancy Pelosi's office. This is like Dem leadership in the House putting this together and talking about this like it's a talking point, like it's concerned, like people will give a shit, like this is good politics for them, but it's really just what they believe, which is like the idea that some poor people might be getting away with getting some money that we could otherwise justify not giving them. But I mean, break it down. If that matters, if that matters, then why give it the money to employed people? Like, if that's all that's going on here, if like, why give $2,000 a month to employed people? Like, why? Because the economy is going to fucking implode. Okay. Because tons of people are just going to starve and die and need this money, and the only way to get it out to them is to make programs as universal as possible, and who gives a fuck if rich people get it? And because the global economy is taking a massive shit like we have never lived through before. And so, you know what Bernie was doing, what he's calling for with this $2,000 a month, what he got in with the $6,000, it's wealth redistribution. It's shock doctrine, man. Like, and they're sensing that. They're getting the way they're real. They know that is what this is. It's very easy to justify. It's a very good case to make. If they wanted to make that case at all, it would be very easy for them to do, the Democrats. It'd be very easy and very popular for them to go out and be making this case. But they act like they're on this defensive where people are going to be like, oh, but rich people will get that, or the poorest people will get $400 a month more in extra assistance they wouldn't gotten outside of COVID than working people. Blah blah blah, and they act like that's a thing anyone will give a shit about, and so they lead with that. Instead, they could be saying, we need this, we need to get this out there, means testing is bullshit, it's a crisis, we just need to throw about our money. And if someone says, what, but someone's getting a little more, you just shut the fuck up. We need to get this money out to people. Somebody who lost their job is getting a little more money from the feds extra. Like, it doesn't, everyone's different, everyone's situation is different, and it's going to come out in lots of different ways. Okay, like, it doesn't matter, Jesus, a few $100, like, it doesn't fucking matter. Like,
well, and their deep concern, I think, at its core, right, is, I mean, one, they don't want to give anything out, they just want austerity, but the big thing is also that their main concern is like a fear. It's mainly informed by like a fear of leveling, right? Again, it's the old idea, right, of like, well, if it's weighted anyway heavier towards the poor or whatever, like towards, unemployed, service sector workers, well, then they might be making close to what, some marginally employed like tech worker makes, right? Or something like that, right? And the concept, the very concept to them that the bottom of the economy might move up a little and be in comparison with a next step up is so fucking abhorrent to them that they have to put in these, million little cuts in the bill, right? That'll make everybody fucking hate it because, God forbid, anybody get moved up in any way, right?
Well,
and because that might say that you could do that all the time, right?
It's also that, because Nancy Pelosi is just a conservative human being with a conservative, like, Burkean worldview.
Far to the right of Richard Nixon, far to the right of...
Oh my God, way to the right of Richard Nixon. Because she would happily also, like, bomb countries back to the Stone Age as well. So, yes, way to the right of Richard Nixon.
Agrees with everything on foreign policy, right? And far to the right of Nixon economic policy.
So because of that, they're also already picturing all these people, these millions of people who have just gotten laid off, in their minds. These people are now, to them, have just become a growing, swelling criminal class. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's who they're thinking. These people who've, because of this, just gotten shut down, out of their jobs, this is now a growing criminal class who are a danger. And then when they hear, if they hear at all, oh, the economy is going to implode, what they are, the worry they have, the conservative worry they have, is that if these people in the coming crisis where we need to get the economy back cranking again, if these people are feeling, these swine are feeling so, high on the hog, so fucking flush, and if they've just like, oh man, over the last few months they've just gotten like all their dental work done, and they've been able to see a doctor, they've like, done some home improvement projects, they've gotten their car fixed, they got the transmission done and brakes on their car, and they've like, man, shit, they've even maybe got like $500 saved, and they, when there was like a sale on Jameson, they bought a case, they started drinking like grocery store wine blends during this time, red blends, and they're thinking like, if these people like are feeling flush, are instead of feeling desperate for work, are feeling flush and are like living it up and having a good time, like, building a treehouse for their kids, then when we need to get the economy going again, we're going to have problems because the price of labor is not going to be
sufficiently low enough.
It's not going to be low enough because they want, what they're seeing is like, well, at least we can get this economy going again, because when it comes back, the price of labor will be so fucking astronomically low because we have such high unemployment that we can get this going again. Okay. And good. That's good. Then business can start making money again. But then they see the rub here. What if actually people don't want to work as much and won't take a shitty job because they've got a few more dollars in their pocket to stay alive during this time. This is insane and completely out of touch, and only something someone with two like $10,000 freezers full of ice cream can think, because actually that's fucking batshit crazy. This money is going to allow people to barely like survive. And yeah, maybe it will allow some people to like get some projects done while, spend some money on some shit they need that they haven't been all this time while they're not working. Maybe some people, most people, it's all going to be shit they need. Okay. Everyone's back on their rent. Everyone's got debt. Everyone needs fucking work on their car. When we try to bring this economy back, I'm talking like them now. We're going to have a demand problem, okay? They think that they don't understand the scale of this crisis. Like, I don't think Nancy Pelosi, all I can figure is she hasn't actually read a newspaper in 20 years. And maybe she gets clippings from the op-ed section of the Wall Street Journal, right? But does she know that in Tory Britain, they are covering all salaries of people? All a business has to do is say, I don't want this person to work right now. And they get their salary covered. And
we know exactly how she feels about all that, because she'd be shocked that the Tories are doing that. But certainly when Corbyn was running, we know that, through CAP and through NERA, Nancy Pelosi's, gal pal, that they were hard against. They were, pro austerity labor.
My point is this. Of course. But that should tell them, if these people, I really wonder, do they know what's going on? Or are they just getting fed conservative shit from their like crazy careerist, like think tanker staffs, right? Because like, can you process the information that the Tory government in Britain is doing this? You would go, wait a minute, that seems incredibly big. That seems like what is going on that they felt like they needed to do that? But what they're worried about,
like any MAGA chud, she can only interpret that as the Tories are communists now. Like that's like her brain literally cannot interpret that information. Like that's where we're at. Right?
That's why I don't think I don't get it, because they really think we're going to have like a supply side problem. And the reality is, the bottom is going to fucking drop out so bad. No one's going to have any money to buy anything if you don't give out this fucking money. And that's it. Like, we're going to have a massive depression like we haven't seen in 100 years. And the only way to prevent that is giving people this money. Okay. The fact that people will be starving and want to go back to work, is not going to bring the economy back. And if you give people this money, what it will mean is they will have money to buy things, which will keep demand from completely cratering, and then they will still be desperate to go back to work after. especially if you take the money away when it's safe to go back to work, like, I mean, that's pretty simple.
Well, I mean, that was the sort of classic formulation that Marx has in Capital, right? If capitalists are like literally incapable of saving themselves. And I mean, Keynes in his own time had brutal knockdown, drag out fights, as well as all the Keynesians and like the Roosevelt administration had brutal knockdown fights over this, where, in their own parties, et cetera, right, would sit there, people would say, well, no, people should only get assistance to the actual, like, absolute bare minimum of subsistence if assistance is given at all. And, they would sit there and, like, I'm sure scream at the wall that is these dumb fucking faces of these just elite fucking shitheads. But, they're screaming and be like, that's not the fucking point of giving them the money. It's not to get them to bare subsistence. Like, these are the people that actually move the economy. These are the people who buy things. It's the actual engine of your economy. You have to prime the pump. You have to give them fucking money or they won't have any money to spend, and the crisis will keep getting worse. But literally no rich person in America believes that. Like, and you can't convince them of it either. You have to overwhelm them with force, right, in order to save their own dumb system.
Yeah, but I guess they're like any chud who can't see who can't see the larger connections. They see their own corporate tax rate, their own capital gains tax rate. That's what they see. And that's how, and the amount of profit they're able to bring in, determines success in their mind. So they can't see the direct connection between the wider connection, right? And they're certainly not teaching it in business school. So, I mean, it's not like there's political education camps for CEOs. I mean, like, that teach them this shit. So, and then allow them to go back on doing capitalism. I mean, they're fucking stupid. All they see is the direct things that they can, see on a balance sheet and say, I'm paying more or less taxes. When, I mean, we, and then they're so wrapped up. I mean, we're so wrapped up in the bullshit. I mean, the Democrats, of course, are big deficit hawks. The deficit thing, again, being another example of this shit like the Laffer curve, which is just made up horse shit that is designed, that is carrying water for other things. That, because we don't need to tax business anymore to pay for this shit. Doesn't fucking matter. We would, a society that was doing a society and your libs don't get that. The conservatives who are pushing this grift know that any society that does start paying for social welfare and becomes more democratic is going to start taxing the rich, whether it's strictly necessary or not, because it's better and because they will want to, because anyone who's not rich, who has any political power, is going to look at a rich person and go, give me your fucking money. I mean, this is the great fear of democracy throughout time. So
all the way back to the founding of this country included. But yeah, and I think the thing too is that this comment about like what the wealthy see and what they don't see, I mean, really their only like vehicle for interpreting the world is the rate of growth of their own wealth, right? And so that's why you get these like insane things where Bill Gates talks, about like, these laws that they talk about in Seattle, if those things pass, like, I don't know if that's the kind of place I'd want to live. The reduction of Bill Gates's law, like wealth, one, is negligible whether it happened at all, but let's just say it did. Let's say Shawswat passed some tax that reduced Bill Gates' wealth by half. He would still have what, $30 billion?
Yeah, but
right?
You're right. That's not an
insane amount of money.
That's not
that he would never ever have to. But that's not what matters. What matters is the rate at which his wealth is growing.
If you're a sociopath who has gotten to that place, you've gotten to that place because you are obsessed with defining yourself by your rate of return. So our system is built to for the psycho to thrive. I mean,
yeah. So I mean, for Nancy Pelosi, who's an extremely wealthy human being,
extremely wealthy sociopath.
Yeah, that is all she gives a shit about, right? So this concept again of priming the pump, this thing that, I mean, the funny thing about Keynesianism is it's like the most obvious and like obvious. It's the most obvious solution to a crisis, but she can't see it because that would probably affect her bank account on some level, right? At least in the immediate short term, and she's just not going to do anything that makes her less wealthy, tomorrow than she is today, right? Everything is about growing her personal wealth.
Yeah, I mean, let's let's not give her so much like steely-eyed credit there. Like,
I don't even know that she like
stooge. She's really again like the layers of con here are many. So she didn't invent these sort of cons. She wasn't paid to invent them. She's one of the dumb shits who believe it because it happens to flatter her own needs too. So it's very easy to convince someone like her who's a dumbass, but who's also like a selfish sociopath rich person. When you tell them, hey, this is how the world works, conveniently, it's very good for you. And your interests, but this is how the world works. So this is how money works. So it's very important for you to push this line. It's very easy to convince someone like Nancy Pelosi of that. So that is what why you invent these, why conservative, economics exists, why economics exists is to invent these ideologies that people can then point to and go, this is correct. This is how the world works, conveniently enough for me. So I'm going to devote my life to austerity, Yeah,
and I mean that's the function of ideology, right? When Marx had his comment that like the elements of like capital, the functioning of capital happens behind the capitalist's back. Like the argument is that Bill Gates probably really does believe that he's being a good Samaritan with his like giving challenge and stuff, and his own personal wealth just keeps growing anyway, somehow miraculously, right? Like. I don't know that even sit around like a super. Well, actually, I do believe Arthur Laffer sits around like a fucking supervillain thinking about this shit. But people like Pelosi, I mean, she's never had a conscious thought of it. But this is everything gets interpreted through this like subconscious, mesh, right? That is basically saying, will this increase your income? Will this increase the income of the people, the bank accounts of the people that you go to the country club with and that you go out to dinners with and go to the Met Gala with and things like that? Will increase their income? And if that initial check mark doesn't get checked, that fucking information just doesn't get to the rest of
it's not that that's the conscious qualification that someone like Nancy Pelosi is looking at everything, but that is a tripwire. That is a tripwire in a minefield that prevents other ideas from getting through, other points of view from getting through, other economic concepts from getting through. It's not, it's if something trips that wire, it's going to be very easy to convince someone like Nancy Pelosi that it's bad.
Yeah,
but exactly, I mean, I got to push back. I don't think Nancy Pelosi has ever had a conscious human thought at all. So, just period.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that you do have to like understand about most politicians, they're not particularly bright. Like they're not giving deep. They're not giving deep thought to things, and a lifetime of being in DC and then going to fundraisers in exactly like 3 cities in America has turned them into fucking monsters.
People with deeper thought, people like Arthur Laffer types, with steepling their fingers, have built schools of thought that have helped to build systems that have in their natural workings selected by these systems people like Nancy Pelosi. Dumbass people amenable to the preservation of great wealth. These
and the people who give it conscious thought all the time
to pull up Nancy Pelosi's out of the ground fully formed. Yeah. It's a farm. For growing them.
Yeah, exactly. Like Pete Buttigieg or something, they like grow it as this fully formed thing, and it just is this like representation of their ideas in some sort of hopefully palatable form for the public. Because of course, if you put a guy like Milton Friedman or Art Laffer or something like that, or Paul Volcker, if you actually put them in front of the public and had them talk to people, I mean, people would just be reviled like instantly. They would never make it a second. I think they're conscious of that. So they get these empty vessels. They create these empty vessels to sort of carry their platform forward. Right. But it's, it's
people sometimes, I feel like people forget that about Larry Summers, or he forgets that about himself.
Yeah.
But because he's right on the edge.
He occasionally tries to break into the public eye, and then is usually immediately hit by a scandal from, basically black people can't do math or women can't do math. Both 2 things he's arguing
just
for.
The shit he says is just heinous. But
he's so outwardly awful that like he's like unpalatable to 90%.
But he's like he's not quite as consciously sinister as these guys. Like he's one step on the con ladder down from like an Arthur Lapper, just one. Mm-hmm. He's still very consciously evil, but just like he's one rung down. But he maybe sometimes thinks he's like lower down than that, and so he should be like a public face with a public like intellectual voice that normal people hear, and that's not. It just doesn't. It's not good. It's not a good look. But fuck, man, he's gonna be the next fucking I don't know, Treasury Secretary or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean he'll be right back in the White House. It's just fucking unbelievable. I mean, just legitimately unbelievable. I mean,
Fed chairman, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that the architect of the 2008-2009 recovery, in quotes, could be the architect of the 2020-2021 recovery is really one of the most astonishing things.
Like reality check for living in this time, going like if it's the same people, we have yet another election that takes us from a Democratic government to a Republican government, a Republican administration to a Democratic one, as an economy is falling apart globally, and the same people who botched the first one are just installed to botch the next one.
Yeah. Well, and I mean,
to commit the bank robbery. Again, which they're already doing.
Well, one thing that was very unique though about the 2007 or 2008, 2009 changeover, right, was that in the previous Republican administration had been a very like outwardly comically dumb administration that did just many awful things, and the Democrats were able to use that in the 2008 election and tell people, hey, look how awful, this is the worst president that's ever existed, just an absolute awful human being. So even you have to vote for our guy, like you just got to, whether you like him or not, you got to vote for a guy. This is a lesser evil situation.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're joking, Brian.
Then when their guy got into office, he just continued all the policies and whatever of the Bush administration, confirming some people's arguments at the time.
Yeah, I mean, you joke.
We're on that spot now.
No, it's worse than that, Brian, because George W. Bush was at that point way less popular and had way less fucking clout than, and the referendum. Again, it could go that way with Trump. Trump could become that unpopular by November if this all sinks into the country's head until then. But we don't have a media that's going to help with that. I'm talking about on the economy and on COVID-19. Right now, our media is not, it's not telling, certainly Fox isn't, but like even the rest of it, it's not going to get through to people like, no, literally, like try to tell a normie American, like literally this is the worst country to be in the world right now. For your likelihood of dying of COVID. They'd be like, you're fucking, that's stupid, shut up. And the economy, it's just not going to happen fast enough and universally enough. This is a weird scenario. Like it's hurting a lot of people hugely right now, but like that's going to be, it's also going to be wrapped up in the COVID thing. And there's going to be, people will be able to think to themselves, well, as soon as this is over, then it'll all go back to normal. People aren't going to be thinking to themselves, oh, this is, going to be weird. This is 1930 and this is just getting started, So it could come through, but I don't think the time scale is long enough for the reality to sink into enough people. So I think more likely is when this election happens, Trump will be way more popular than Bush was in 08. And again, it could go the other way, but I don't, the time scale seems too short for where we're at now and the state of the country and the MAGA chuds and the media and whatever. And
the
other difference is Obama was this incredibly apparently transformative, charismatic figure who was not just because of Bush's incredible unpopularity elected also on a wave of his own popularity. And then we still got the shit sandwich that we got. So now when this total fucking like decrepit, racist, dying rapist freak comes in with a mandate of 0.01% above Trump, the guy who's wanted to cut Social Security his entire career and is essentially an arch conservative. I mean, think of how much worse it's going to be.
Yeah. And again, a guy extremely to the right of Richard Nixon, basically to the right of Reagan for most of his career. But the thing is, yeah, I mean, the thing that people forget about 2008 is that George Bush was so fucking unpopular that John McCain actually asked him not to campaign for him and basically told him go into hiding while I'm campaigning.
Yeah.
I mean, just astonishingly unpopular, which, yeah, Trump's not going to get to that level.
Absolutely could happen. It's hard for me to picture.
I think it requires a Democratic Party that is able to frame the debate or whatever about.
Or a media that broadly, roundly turns on the reality of what is happening in a way that they're not doing now. There are a lot of the media is broadly like against Trump, but of course it's this it's always been all along. It's on this superficial, civility discourse level. And they're not, they're ending up the overall tone of coverage, even of, your MSNBC types and other stuff that is covering, the incompetence, the goof 'em ups of the bungled Trump response. It has this very sort of political tone to it, and it like a very sort of partisan. It has the same tone, it has the same vibe as what they've been saying about Trump all along. It's not communicating the scale of the failure of America. That this whole society is a fucking joke. I mean, we're getting, Inslee being propped up in, the New Yorker as an example, the Washington State and King County, right, as an example of how to do this right. It's when in fact that's horseshit. And yet it's actually is probably one of the best responses in the country. They're just the realities of what this is. And we're, it's not being communicated again in a way that's going to sink into any large number of people, the scale of the economic devastation that's coming. So, yeah.
Well, and the irony too, I just figured out there's a second irony. We need to do an episode where we just talk the 2008 election, but there's even a second irony there, which is the Republican Party. We can read into this what you will, but the Republican Party basically panicked because Bush was so unpopular. And they just went to their bench and were like, you know what, John, we owe you. You've been here a long time. You've been a senator a long time. You've been a loyal soldier. We owe it to you. But the thing was, no Republicans like him. I mean, that's the thing nobody remembers either. It's the Republican base doesn't like John McCain. Democrats like John McCain for fucking completely stupid, arbitrary reasons. Like John McCain. Yeah, journalists love John McCain, which is probably why Democrats like him. Democrats literally like him because Jon Stewart likes him. But the thing is that Republicans don't like John McCain. So he basically had to bring on Sarah Palin, and she was the only fucking source of energy or whatever for the base that could be mustered. And of course, he ends up getting roundly just fucking trounced by Obama. But yeah, I mean, the Republicans get this completely lackluster candidate who only appeals to the other party, and the other party will never vote for. I mean, just right. Astonishing.
And what's different here, I guess another big difference is Trump is the incumbent.
Yeah. I mean, Trump's the front runner at this point, by a large margin. I mean, it's going to take a lot for Biden to sneak this one out. And, I don't know that he's got it in him.
Oh, God. I mean, I think that goes true for anyone they try to replace him with, too. I mean.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we should close out here. I just want to give a shout out to, again, Democratic Party, longtime Democratic Party fucking shithead, Governor Cuomo in New York for promising the Gates Foundation that they could completely remake the New York City or the New York State school systems, public school systems. Worked great in New Orleans. So, again, Democratic mayor in New Orleans who pushed that through. So, wonderful. I can't wait to privatize the entire New York State school system. That should be badass. What could go wrong, right?
Cool.
Huge history of success over there at the Gates Foundation when it comes to education.
Yeah, loving it. Great.
Yeah, I love it.
It's just the beginning. It's just the beginning.
Yeah. So with the characteristic upbeatness of all our shows, I think we should probably sign off right about here.
Yeah.
So,
thank you. We have Luke is our newest patron. Thanks, Luke.
Oh, thank you, Luke. All right. And the rest of you guys out there, do better. Become our patron. We need the money. Greg needs the money more specifically, but
Hey, man, I'm flush now. I got that Bernie bucks coming in.
Yeah, the Bernie bucks. We got the Trump bucks too a couple weeks ago, didn't you?
No, it just came in. It came in like yesterday.
Damn.
I got a check from Betty.
Yeah, exactly. Greg, he's already framed it and put it up on the boat. But Greg still needs your money because he's up armoring his boat to prepare for the future apocalypse that we're all facing.
Yeah. Cool. I'm outfitting it with torpedoes, but not like a PT boat, where they like launched off the deck. More like the African Queen, where it's just like strapped to the hull, sticking out forward, and when the like sinking hulk of my boat runs into yours, it explodes.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. Yeah. Either that or like I think it was in the 19th century when they like first experimented with torpedoes. It would just be like two guys holding it and they would just throw it off the side of the boat.
Yeah, like, totally,
dude.
Hell yeah.
Go, dude.
Yeah,
kind of like the first.
You just wind up the propeller and spin it away.
Yeah. It's like a children's toy. They just wind that fucker up and then be like, all right, chuck it off in the general direction.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Good times.
Cool.
All right. So Greg needs that money to make his battle boat. But for everybody else, we'll see you guys next time.